I suppose the big question here for this Angel Prison deck is how does it line up against Reanimator?
Well, let's see. There are some copies of Chalice of the Void, so it can start off with a Chalice on 1, which is problematic for Reanimator to handle. There are some removal spells if you have an opportunity to cast them. You do have Wrath of God. So I suspect the matchup here is not great for Joshua, but we will just have to wait and see.
He also has copies of Karakas, too, in the mana base, so.
That's true. Karakas is a big help.
As far as Joe's threats are concerned, 4 Gristlebrand, a Sphinx of the Steel, One-Eight Tidespot Tyrant, Iona, Shield of Emeria, and a copy of Elishnorn, Grand Cenobite. Again, this is the Reanimator deck that Joe Lossett did play at our Players' Championship a few weeks ago. Made it into day 2 of competition of that tournament, had a nice little run there. And was a bold choice then, looks to me even a bold choice now. I imagine some people are still a little surprised that he's not playing Miracles.
Yeah, and for Joshua, this deck is all about the initial lock pieces. It's Trinosphere, Cataclysm, Armageddon effects, Chalice of the Void, Sphere Resistance. This is what the deck's all about.
It's taking a page out of the Workshops deck from Vintage.
Yes.
That's what it's trying to do. Now, of course, Workshops actually has the ability to play Miniatures Workshop, so don't get to operate the exact same, but a turn 1 Sphere of Resistance is still pretty good.
Absolutely. It's again, as you mentioned, it's not quite as good as some of the other lock pieces, but on the play, quite the opening.
So Lossett, all he could do was just play Bloodstained Mind and pass the turn back. Windswept Teeth there for Taylor before passing the turn. For Resistance, of course, makes all spells cost an additional 1 to play. Yours and mine. There's an Underground Sea for Lossett. Does have a Careful Study in hand.
Very exciting rare to open in your booster pack.
Is that true? Is that true?
I get it. You know, you got to print some cards like that, but it's just imagine the kid goes to the store with his allowance and is really excited to buy his booster of Exodus, and he goes to the back of the pack, and then it's just some card that makes his cards more expensive.
Look, Mom, my Crawworm costs 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
I already couldn't cast Mahamud Edition, and now I definitely can't cast Mahamud Edition.
My favorite is where the kid would just say, "Why is this so rare?"
Yeah.
Here's a Ponder
Kind of
from
it's okay, you know. It's for tournament players. It's just sometimes I see some rares and I'm like, that's sad. That's sad that that's a rare.
Would you prefer it if it were an uncommon?
Probably closer to uncommon.
Yeah.
Probably closer to uncommon.
It's an earlier stage of the game.
That's
back
true.
in Exodus.
Well, Thorn of Amethyst got printed down the line also
I
as
suppose
rare.
that was a rare too, yeah. Windswept Teeth gonna get sacrificed.
I think it's borderline. It's just for a class of the audience, it's definitely a sad open.
It is. There's a beautiful Plains.
Big fan of the betas, and they're not that expensive. It's a worthy purchase.
Really?
I don't know. Somewhere I would have guessed between like $5 and $10 for the beta basics, depending on condition.
That's like Chipotle. That's fine.
Yeah.
Would you rather have a Chipotle burrito
Mystery
or
box.
Beta Plains?
Beta planes.
Beta Plains, okay.
I would take a mystery box.
Okay. Many would take the burrito.
Oh, I know.
Modern challenge players, pairings for round 4 are being
Well, we'll see what Joshua can put together here on the 3rd turn of the game. At a Sphere, which is, of course, a pretty nice start. And the question, again, does he know what Joe Lossett is playing? Does he know what he's up against? It doesn't really look like anything at this point. There's a fetch land. There are 2 lands in play. It could be a Grixis deck. It could be a bevy of things. And, of course, we know he's on Reanimator, as there's a copy of Wasteland.
Well, it's probably not Miracles.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that Joshua at this point, I'm sure has deduced.
He's going to fire off Wasteland, go up to the Underground Sea, and pass the turn back over to Lossett. Lossett going to draw. Copy of Entomb. There's Gemstone Caverns. Joshua Taylor wants to take a look. No surprise there. Here's a Careful Study.
So go work with that Wasteland, cutting Joe off a black.
Nah, that's really, really important.
Or the standard Premier IQ or the modern Premier IQ.
And if Joshua didn't know what Joe was up to before, this should be the dead giveaway. There's basically no other deck that plays Careful Study in the format.
Right.
And given that Joe has discarded a Firestorm and a Sphinx of Steel Wind, if Joshua doesn't know, he just doesn't play Legacy.
Yeah. Certainty has now gone up above 99%.
Ancient Tomb looks to be the draw step. Now, what's interesting here is, does Joe know what Joshua's playing? Because Angel Prison is not a deck you see a lot of.
Joe is so knowledgeable about Legacy, and LA has such a good seed that this is probably not his first time seeing this deck in action. I mean, the specifics, of course, it's going to be different, but
looks like Taylor's going to deploy an Ancient Tomb. He's got a lot of mana here, and he's going to take some damage to deploy a copy of Trinisphere. That's going to resolve. And the rule of Trinisphere is Trinisphere rules all.
Yep.
Remember that. Do I pay one more or anything? Just Trinisphere over everything.
And at this stage, it's worth noting that Joe is locked in whole by Crucible of Worlds. Or he would have to build up so many fetch lands to be able to get out from under it.
Yeah.
Trinisphere plus Crucible would effectively lock him at this stage.
Yeah, in combination with the Wasteland in the graveyard.
Right.
Something we haven't seen in quite a long time.
What?
And what is this? Okay, Elspeth. Hello. Haven't seen you for some time. So that's going to come down. And that means the elevator is going to move up as far as soldier tokens are concerned. So the elevator always moves up on this Elspeth. That's a win condition.
Yes, it is. One copy in Joshua's list.
My favorite Elspeth, personally. And now there's a Wasteland, and this one might be over.
Well, it's the most powerful Elspeth.
Joe going to draw a card, copy of Force of Will.
Little late.
Going to be discarding a copy of Reanimate. Joshua will draw a card. Chalice of the Void was just picked up. We'll play a Plains. But if you're Joshua, you might not have to play any other spells.
Oh, this is 4 turn.
Yeah. Push it down to 11. Could deploy a Chalice, I suppose. And this will be a Chalice. And it's going to cost 3 because Trinisphere does rule all. Go back Lassette's way. Lossett can do nothing. He is in prison.
Yes.
Aptly named. Prison's decks aren't something that you see in Standard. You don't really see a ton in Legacy anymore either. You know, the only real Prison deck you see is in Modern, or excuse me, in Vintage with shops.
Yeah, it is chock full of cards that R&D would not touch in modern sense.
Yeah.
You need to have a saturation of 2 mana lands and ways to lock out your opponent for 2 or 3 mana. And neither of these things go to print anymore.
So a prison type strategy is not something you see very much of in modern Magic nowadays, but it is certainly making its presence known here in this particular match for Joshua Taylor. The goal is to make it so that your opponent can do nothing. It's the way that I prefer to cube draft.
The lock?
Yeah. If my opponent gets to play their spells or have any fun, I have not accomplished my goal.
Sure.
That is why I select cards very highly like Tangle Wire, Braids Cabal Minion, Land Destruction.
One of the, I really like a Braids. I really dislike a Tangle Wire.
Love them both. Preferably in combination with each other. Big fan. Here's an attack now. Creature wearing a Jite. Joe's going to draw a card, and he has seen enough as he cannot do anything. Behind bars is Joe Lossett as Joshua Taylor wins this first game over Joe. Angel Prison up a game over Reanimator, and hey, that was pretty easy.
That was really straightforward. Yeah, very powerful opening there for Joshua. A lot of mana disruption, turn 1 sphere resistance, basically set Joe back an entire turn. The Trinisphere, on top of Joe not having lands, that was problematic. A lot of good stuff going on from Joshua's side of the table.
We'll take a look at the sideboards here, and we will start with Joe, who looks like he might be in a pretty tough matchup here. He does have a Tropical Island, 2 Bayous, along with 3 copies of Abrupt Decay. Those seem like they'll be pretty important. An Echoing Truth, 4 copies of Thoughtseize, 2 Pithing Needles, a Coffin Purge, and a copy of Massacre.
I like the Thoughtseizes a lot, as often these prison-style decks really only have 1 card you have to worry about, 1 thing you have to get out of their hand. I think the 3 copies of Abrupt Decay and the 1 Echoing Truth can also do a lot of good work against the lock pieces he's going to be playing against.
Angel Prison, we haven't seen this deck for a little while, so I can only imagine what's in the sideboard.
2 copies of Aegis of the Gods, a Humility, a Wrath of God, 2 Timely Reinforcements, a Ratchet Bomb, 2 Chokes, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Crozan Grip, an Armageddon, and an Aether Sworn Canvas. The 2 Rest in Peace are excellent here. I think the 1 Humility is great as well. It's very hard for Joe to win if it resolves.
Aegis of the Gods.
Yeah.
Been a while.
A hater.
Yeah.
Hater in the house.
I don't think you can beat that one, Burn
Nope.
Boy.
Oh, Timely Reinforcements too. That one's not easy. Chalice of the Void, Trinisphere, Sphere of Resistance. I mean, there's a lot of air in this deck as well, but the hits are platinum hits against Burn.
Yeah, perhaps the Burn matchup is pretty good. Does seem like it might be pretty good
I mean,
here.
this guy also gets some draws that's not going to go anywhere, you know?
For sure. I mean, that's the risk of playing a deck like this. Is some of your draws are great and some of your draws are complete embarrassments.
Yeah, like your Ghostly Prison, Banishing Light, Wrath of God, Restoration Angel type of draws, Crucible of Worlds. There's some misses.
There are definitely some misses.
Yeah.
But that first game was definitely a hit there for Joshua Taylor. That's why he's up 1 game over number 1 on our leaderboard here in Joe Lossett. And we will take a look at our leaderboard right now here for Season 1. Joe has had a really good run, not only last year, but to kick off this year too.
Yeah, winning week 1 in Columbus is a big deal as it shot him all the way up to first place on the leaderboard. And for a player where, you know, they're going to be out in the West Coast, their options to travel to opens are going to be maybe slightly limited. It's important for Joe to snag up the invite as he can. So he's going to make a push for Season 1, I'm sure.
171 Open Series points there. Jim Davis, 164. Those 2 guys are battling it out. Kevin Jones here as well with 161. And Ross Merriam, he's sitting at 4-2 right now with 155 Open Series points. He's got to make day 2. It's really, really important for him to do that, to keep up in this race with Lossett, Davis, and Jones. One thing you always like to mention is you never know which point it's going to be that you wish you would have had.
Exactly, and all these players, you know, this is a great jumping off point for Season 1, and all these players are in a good spot to get it, but over time, 2015 is going to matter more and more, so Ross really wants to capitalize on the momentum he got in 2014 and try to make a run at the Season 1 point invite.
Well, there you see the top 8 of the standings, and Lossett at the very, very top of it right now, so game number 2 going to be underway here in just a moment between Joshua Taylor and Joe Lossett. And Gerard Fabiano is a player who's actually written about this Angel Prison deck that Joshua Taylor is playing. Angel Prison, not a very popular Legacy deck. We don't see very much of it when we do coverage of Legacy, but Joshua Taylor looking to put this deck on the map, maybe an option that players should maybe more widely consider.
Well, I'm always suspicious of these Chalice of the Void decks because it feels like the games they don't have Chalice, they have too many disconnected parts. They miss out on a lot of Legacy's core power, things like Brainstorm and Ponder, but Josh was able to win very easily that game, and Chalice of the Void was not a player. It was the other cards.
Yeah. It's funny because, you know, you see this kind of prison deck in action, you wonder, and, you know, you kind of wonder yourself, well, I wonder how much better the Vintage version is. For those of you who've never played Vintage, or you read about Vintage, but you've never been on the receiving end of a beating from shops before.
Well, Mishra's Workshop is quite the increase in power level to these styles of decks.
You will not enjoy yourself when your opponent starts the game with a turn 1 Trinisphere and a turn 2 Lodestone Golem.
I mean, I feel like Vintage is all about, that's the point.
That's true.
Doing things like that is the point.
That's true.
If I wanted to play with Siege Rhinos, I'd play with Siege Rhinos. I'm playing in Vintage because I want things like that to happen.
Turn 1 Sphere of Resistance. Turn 2 Lodestone Golem. Deal with that. That's what I say. Here's a Bloodstained Mire, Wasteland on the other side of the table. The set will draw a card. See, he's got a copy of Abrupt Decay, Exhume in hand as well. Play a copy of Underground Sea. It's a target there for the Wasteland. Joe does have a Brainstorm at the ready, and he will cast it. So 3 cards coming here. 2 cards will be going back here for the set. The nice thing is he's always got the green light to cast his spells. Well, as long as those Spheres and Trinispheres aren't out there.
You would assume, and I don't think there's really any play at instant speed here. A couple copies of Crozan Grip, but I don't think they're for in this matchup, and Joe has essentially 0 targets. Other than that, Joshua is very much just playing on his main phase. What's really interesting about Joshua's list is no copies of Swords to Plowshares. He's just planning on locking people out. Not interested in playing with random pieces of creature removal.
Seems I guess risky is the word I think of. It's just, you know, if a creature slides in, how's he going to get off the table? I mean, he does have big creatures in his own right. Stoneforge Mystic and a small equipment package, Baneslayer Angel, Restoration Angel. I mean, he does have ways to tussle, but...
mean, Banishing Light's a good answer. Wrath of God's a good answer. You're not allowed to attack is a good answer.
Sure.
You're not allowed to play spells is a good answer. But it's just interesting. You would imagine 4X Swords of Plowshare would start this kind of deck list, but Joshua not bothering.
Joe figuring out exactly how he wants to resolve this brainstorm here. Now he's going to sacrifice that Bloodstained Mire. There is Underground Sea.
But for all the lead that Joe has in Season 1, you know, if he loses this match, then all of a sudden it's back against the wall time. And if he misses day 2, it's very easy for someone else to jump him.
Careful study. 2 cards coming here for Joe. Reanimate among them. 2 cards going to have to go to the graveyard. I think the issue here for the set, I'm not entirely sure he has a creature to put down there just yet.
I think he has, I believe he has Gristlebrand.
Yeah, okay. It looks like he might. He had to go along with the reanimate he's discarding. Yep, okay. There's the big fella.
The risk here is, right now, Rest in Peace is going to resolve. Joe could have left up Abrupt Decay and tried to work his way around another way, but he's crossing his fingers, hoping that Joshua does not have it. Because his hand does not really have anywhere else to go. He can get off the table, but the damage will be done just by it resolving.
Taylor a little unsure of himself what he wants to do on the second turn of the game. Looks like he's going to go with the Plains as land number 2. Does he fire off Wasteland? Does he have anything better to do? Much like Shops and Vintage, this Angel Prison deck much better on the play than it is on the draw. And there's Rest in Peace, and it will resolve.
It's a big deal, because Joe's hand not really redundant right now.
Joe going to draw a copy of Polluted Delta. Also has a Bloodstained Mire here, too. So he does have an answer to that Rest in Peace. Taylor with the Plains. Now there's a copy of Ghostly Prison. Bloodstained Mire going to get sacrificed. And you have to imagine Joe searching for one of those green sources that he boarded in. Again, two bios and a tropical island to facilitate the Abrupt Decays.
Imagine if he's fetching right now, he's planning on knocking out this Rest in Peace right now.
Most likely. Most likely. Got to get the thing off the table for his deck to actually, you know, function.
Exactly, and he could try to hold it until the last minute to try to trick Joshua, but because Joe can potentially reanimate something this turn if he draws Entomb, makes sense to get off the table and maximize his draws.
Force of Will was the draw. Passing of the turn. Ancient Tomb is the land. Now here's Chalice. So the plan of perhaps drawing Entomb and casting is no longer an option.
Careful study also off the table.
Yeah.
I mean, this is problematic for Joe.
Joe going to draw. I believe it was a copy of Gristlebrand. Perhaps a new plan is in order.
He may have to just discard a hand size, but it looks like he's rather would play land number 5 so he can cast Force of Will. Maybe next turn if he misses, we'll see him start to just draw and say go. But that's a really slow way to do it.
I think you've forgotten about Plan C, which is to cast the Gristlebrand. Ever heard of it?
Well, I suppose, but that seems like we're pretty far away from that.
Joe going to sacrifice the Polluted Delta here. Going to get a land out of his deck. Baneslayer Angel needs to be countered. Now Joe's going to sacrifice his Bloodstained Mire. He'll go with the Bayou. May not be as far away from that as you think. The old cast Gristlebrand plan.
I suppose. And if he can cast it, he can certainly pay for Ghostly Prisons.
That's true. That won't be a problem, correct. Here's a hard cast Force of Will to take care of Baneslayer Angel. And it's a good thing he had that. The set does have a Delta. He'll just pass the turn back, though. He might be on the discard plan, as you mentioned. Switching gears now, trying to build a big hand. Hoping the prison deck doesn't do too much. Oh no.
Another Baneslayer.
He's tapping, okay. Well, Angel Prison indeed. Take a draw step. Is that a copy of Massacre?
I think Entomb.
Okay.
Entomb means that if Joe can draw Abrupt Decay, he's got something good going. He can
Yep.
do it all in one shot.
Looks like Wasteland will be activated. Take care of the Tropical Island. Gonna head back Taylor's way. Beat down City, USA. Taylor up to 19, Lossett down to 11. 3 turns to go here for Angel Prison. Batter Skull at the ready. Could speed things up a little bit here.
I mean, Batterskull and Baneslayer Angel can race Gristlebrand.
Yeah. Joe just gonna pass the turn back. Taylor gonna draw. Ancient Tomb. There's the beatdowns again. Man, I like deploying it now. It's
Sure.
lethal next turn. So there's Batterskull.
Pro Demon with a Batterskull on it. Vigilance.
Ever heard of it? Joe gonna draw a copy of Animate Dead? Well, that one actually does have a target.
Yes.
But it's not in Joe's graveyard. It's on the other side.
You can see the. Well, what else am I gonna do? You know.
Pretty much. Joe gonna go with the Reanimate over there.
Well, the first test here is see if Joshua remembers his Chalice of the Void trigger, because he does have to declare it.
Yep. And he did not. So Joe's gonna go down to 1 to get a Baneslayer Angel into play.
Well, Joshua may have a Banishing Light type of effect to remove this. I mean, it's not necessarily a mistake.
Here's some mana. I think we could just see him perhaps equip the Baneslayer Angel with a Batterskull. That could be an option. And Banish Light could be an option as well. Banish Light will take care of that. Red zone we go. Yeah, that's gonna yeah, that's gonna do it. Okay. Joshua Taylor is going to take down Joe Lossett, and Joe is not too thrilled about it. But Angel Prison seems like a difficult matchup for the Reanimator deck.
Well, I'm not sure in that spot if it's one of those things where Joshua forgot the Chalice